Welcome all of those who are joining us this evening. My name is Joseph Malcarney. I am the chairman of the Town of Clinton Zoning Boards of Appeals. And tonight's opening statement is the following. Tonight's meeting has been convened in accordance with the Governor's March 13th, 2020 Executive Order 202.1 as extended, which suspends certain provisions of the open meeting law to allow the ZBA to convene a meeting via video conference. In accordance with the executive order, the public has been provided with the ability to view tonight's ZBA meeting via YouTube, to the town's YouTube channel, and this information has been provided in meeting notices. And a transcript will be provided at a later date. The meeting is also being recorded. And I would ask that my colleagues kind of wave their hand around as I introduce them. Again, my name is Joseph Malcarney. I am the chairman of the Town of Clinton Zoning Board of Appeals. My colleagues are John Calogero, Charles Cannon, Norma Dolan, Ron Mostello, Arthur Weiland, and Russell Tompkins. And we have Arlene, that I'm sure all of you know from the filling out your applications and sending in information. For the agenda this evening, we have the following area variances. We have the Cats and Dogs Property LLC area variance, the Magnota area variance, and the Del Forno area variance. And we will follow in that order. Arlene, have all adjoining property owners been notified?
Yes.
And have all fees been paid?
No, condition please, the publication.
Okay, we can do that. So to begin, we'll start with Cats and Dogs Property LLC. And who on here is involved with that? Okay, yeah, you want to unmute yourself? And do a quick introduction.
Hi, I'm Kristen Zarella with Hudson Design, representative agent to Cat and Dog Properties, Kathleen Doran, architect to Hudson Design.
All right, and we have authorization letters on file.
Yes.
Okay. So if you would kind of give us a quick rundown about what it is that you are applying for an area variance for, and then John will take it from there.
Sure. Thank you, zoning members, for listening to us. Kathleen Doran, the property owner, Cats and Dogs Properties. She purchased the 3 adjoining lots, which were previous non-conforming lots, which she combined, creating a more ideal situation, in our opinion, to not have 3 residential homes, but she'll have a single family residential home on the 3 lots combined into 1. And the required minimum lot width is 400 feet. And she's coming in at 387, only 13 feet short. It's out of her control. It's a nothing we can do to really obtain the 400 feet. The actual, I think, Arlene, are you bringing up the?
Can you see it or no?
Yeah.
I don't see the plan yet, but I'm assuming.
Can you see it or no?
We're seeing the survey now.
And that's what.
Is this the one you want, Christine?
Yeah, it is. I'm not seeing it for some reason. I just got an unexpected Zoom error. So
Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
As long as everybody else can see it, it's in my memory.
That's the old house. That's the old house.
Yeah, but she's not seeing anything on her screen.
Yeah, I don't see anything. some reason it's, I think I'm having a Zoom error. I could see you guys. For some reason, I just see a black screen.
Okay.
We
if you're-
we see a good map here showing the 3 properties with the 3 existing lines and basically the new house in the middle of those 3 combined. That's what we're looking at right now.
The survey.
That may be the old house on there.
If it's like, if it looks like handwritten type of sketch, then it's the previous survey that she purchased, that she had done when she first purchased the house. So that was the previous survey representing the 3 lots that she bought and combined. And the that existing house, we've demolished just the house portion due to safety concerns. So, but for all intents and purposes, the actual footprint is being just represented at this moment.
There's a shed in the setback that you also demolished, possibly?
Yes, the sheds are also. They were, we condone them as hazardous to be on the site without maintenance.
Yeah, good.
So with that, the actual frontage is much longer, but given the way that you calculate the minimum ratio at the center of it is what brings us to the 387. I believe we're closer to like 450 when you actually look at the frontage of the property, but given its geometry, it doesn't work out that way.
That's interesting because parcel access had you at 455.
That's the frontage, 455.
Frontage on the road,
Yes, correct.
but you don't own to the road? Is that,
We do own to the road, but according to what the definition, when I was reading to figure out what the minimum lot ratio it is, they say that you take the minimum, which is closer to the lake, and then the frontage or whatever it is, the minimum and the maximum, you find the average. So the average came in at 387.
curious? I was surprised by parcel access. Okay, interesting.
But that's what parcel access actually says that is, I guess it went by the frontage.
Yeah, it looks like it probably went by the frontage.
So we went in front of the planning board last week, and they gave us a positive movement to go forward with you.
Okay. Okay. Anything else you want to add before we kind of take over?
I think that's all I have. So
Okay. John.
Yes. I'll start with the planning board motion and move forward from there. So I'll summarize this basically. At the planning board meeting held on February 16th, the following motion was made. That the town of Clinton Planning Board approve the following resolution in the matter of cat and dog properties at 39 Lake Pleasant Drive. Whereas applicant Kathleen Duran seeks an area variance pursuing to 250-98 for the property, which is less than the minimum width permitted. Applicant has combined non-conforming properties bordering Brown's Pond into a single more substantial but still non-conforming property. They previously approved the demolition of a house on one of the prior lots, noting that the plan to build a single residence on 3.09 acres was closer to the 5-acre minimum in an AR5 zone than 3 houses that could have been built on the property under pre-existing zoning. The town schedule requires that each lot in an AR5 zone have a minimum width of 400 feet. The lot in question is 387 feet. The variance sought is minimal and not substantial. They go on to say it will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties. As noted, the applicant's plan will bring the property closer to minimum zoning. Given the size of the combined lot, the benefit cannot be achieved by other means. The variance will not have an adverse effect on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. And that the motion was carried 6-0. So there are several interesting points about this project, I think, that we can consider. You know, I think that if we go back to the comprehensive plan has as one of its goals the idea of eliminating nonconformity as much as possible and never allowing an increase in nonconformity in the way things are developed. And while it is true that this parcel remains non-conforming, it certainly takes a step toward the goal of conformity. It can't reach it without acquiring more property from adjoining owners, which would be impossible since those lots cannot be sold in part because they're already non-conforming. So it puts the owner in a very tough situation of really being unable to meet that criteria. So what they've got going for them is the idea of pre-existing conditions, as do I would say every other lot on Lake Pleasant Drive. When you look at Lake Pleasant Drive, you will see that this new combined lot is now the lot that has the most width of any of the lots on Lake Pleasant Drive. Most of them all measure in the 110 foot width area. One of them at the road itself is only 48 feet. This one doesn't make the 400 foot cutoff, but it certainly is much closer to what the zoning looked at as ideal. And so I think that there's a lot going in this proposal that should make the town comfortable with it. So I'm interested to see what my colleagues have to say, and I'll be quiet for a minute.
Sure. Other comments from the zoning board?
This certainly, as John said, this is going in the right direction. It's definitely a benefit to the town, I think, to reduce density. However, I'm wondering whether there should be a variance to build on a substandard lot. This is a new lot. It's created now as a new lot. It doesn't have its grandfathered characteristics of having a structure on it. Even if it did have the structure, you're not allowed to move the structure. It's already been demolished. I don't think that would be anything more than a bureaucratic paperwork consideration.
What are you proposing, Arthur?
That we investigate whether or not they need a variance for building on a substandard lot.
Okay.
Joseph, I'll bring up another issue that it does appear to me, even though this is not a zoning board issue, that project that's described on the screen in front of us would require a permit from the planning board under the freshwater wetlands, watercourses, lakes, ponds, and floodplains permit under Town of Clinton zoning law. There was a letter from, I think, Mr. Copeland suggesting that since this doesn't fit within the definition of a wetland, it would not, but that's not my reading of the law, which I think if you read section 250-78 in full, it references controlled areas and specifically with reference to ponds says that the controlled area is 100 feet. Various aspects of this are very close. They're within 100 feet. They're close to the 75-foot rear yard setback. They're they're very nicely set out of the setback, but they are within the 100-foot controlled area defined under section 250-78. I don't see any way this project does not require a permit. And it's, you know, we always use the phrase a wetlands permit, but it is not simply a wetlands permit. The town law on this is very explicit that it covers all water bodies. And the 100-foot controlled area in the definitions section of our zoning law is very clear that it applies to ponds. So again, this is not something we have to deal with tonight. It's just, I do think it's something that this project as described right there would need a permit from the town under our law, and that would go through the planning board.
They did submit the wetlands permit. They're on the agenda next meeting.
Thank you. You could have shut me up, Arlene.
I don't
Fool
want
myself.
to be rude. I don't want to be rude, but at least you were able to explain it to them.
Just wave your arms more wildly.
Normally I will interrupt, but you know, I let you do your talk.
Excellent point, Charles. Thank you for picking up on that. That was very good. Christina, any comments about what Arthur mentioned? Has that looked into at all about a substandard lot?
No, we haven't looked into it. We sort of, by the planning board and previous comments made about this sort of being a situation that it's sort of out of our hands. We believe we are creating a better situation that could be created if we had not joined the 3 lots together. I think having to pursue an additional variance beyond this one is not ideal. We have an agenda to hopefully try to move forward with the wetlands permit as was explained, and we've submitted all that information, and it is desired for us to be able to just have to be awarded the variance for the minimum width at this time, and then to hopefully be able to go through the process of the wetlands permit, if I may say so.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Charles, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think what Arthur is suggesting is just protection, that there's no future question about the viability. I guess, Arthur, I don't know why we couldn't have an amendment and add, I mean, I know it was not advertised, so that's the question. Are we allowed to add to this tonight's variance request, or at least just make a note that, you know.
Arlene's waving.
Okay, sorry.
We did a couple of times where you guys decided to add another variant. Can I just add that section 250-82, if you want to read about non-conforming lots. So.
Do you have that there?
Charlie will read it.
Yeah, I have discussed this with another board member and did also remember there are several situations where we had to make adjustments to applications, and we considered that the notification would be sufficient. The only hitch here is there's no notification, which is, you know, it's a letter, it's another application, it's a bit of an expense, but it's it is, as Jack Leary would have said, it's the proper thing to do. I don't know how many of you remember how tough Jack Leary was, but
We did a lot in the past where you added another, you found another variant.
Yeah, certainly.
I think it's a question of notification to other landowners. I doubt that it would be a problem significant problem to deal with.
Agreed. I don't think it would be. Okay, Charles, did you have 250.82? Or did anyone have that?
It's the shortest section in our entire zoning law. It
It's
just
about
says,
non-conforming lot.
it says, nothing shall prevent the use of a non-conforming lot, provided it meets all other requirements of the whole rest of the law. So, I mean,
Okay.
What does that mean? If it's not, I mean, if it's grandfathered in,
yeah,
that's,
Well, actually, it just says provided it meets all applicable building codes, health department, and other requirements of this chapter, 250-18. So, but it didn't say bulk regulations.
Can I ask though, I mean, these were pre-existing non-conforming buildable lots.
Right.
Yeah, this is, I guess the simplest thing from my point of view is simply to, if John is amenable, is to add a statement to the motion tonight that essentially grants a variance from the 5, if this is an AR5, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, AR5.
You know, basically allows the construction of a new single-family residence on a pre-existing non-conforming lot.
Not pre-existing, no, I think that's, it's not pre-existing, it's new. And that's why I think it's in their best benefit
Okay,
if we address it somehow. It is non-conforming, but it's not pre-existing.
Right.
Although the other two that were buildable were, so it's just, they'd be better off with a little statement somewhere along the way.
It's actually a newly created lot because it used to be 3 lots that they combined it. So now it's 1 new lot.
New lot,
Right.
so it's new non-conforming, but there were 3 pre-existing non-conforming. So the pre-existing should probably carry over to some degree. I don't have a problem with it. I just think in the future that they might be better off having something in the record noted
Sure, that's a great suggestion.
at a minimum.
Any other comments? All right, John, do you want to kind of summarize what you're hearing here? And
Well, what I'm hearing seems to be that everyone is generally pleased with the idea of the project, but we've got a couple little glitches that need to be ironed out to make it all right. And my line of thinking is that the notification is the big issue. You know, I'm sure adjoining property owners were notified about the width of the lot, and I don't think any of them meet a 5-acre minimum on, you know, anyone on Lake Pleasant Drive. As far as I could see, the next largest lot was a little more than 2. So I can't imagine, you know, people being burned at the stake for proposing this project because it's less than 5 acres, because everyone's in the same boat. But strange things happen when properties change hands, and when mortgages are applied for, and when municipal certificate of occupancies don't exist saying the right thing. So I think it's in the applicant's best interest to make it right. It's unfortunate that the planning board didn't bring this up. We could have addressed it in one evening, but I think that we can go forward and grant this with variance very comfortably, because that doesn't mean that there aren't other issues. It just means that this one's behind them. And then let them move forward, and possibly Arlene can get the planning board to act on it quickly.
What do you mean?
Before we go there, let's just kind of float past, you know, again, we have done these changes, but we'll say on the fly, meaning adding variances or parts thereof that we've discovered as we've kind of gone through this. And to, you know, I think everyone's point, but what Norma and Arthur brought up is that we had 3 pre-existing non-conforming lots. And by joining them all together, now we have a new non-conforming lot. So what are kind of our sense? does the zoning board have reservations about adding that to that? Again, in the light of, this is something that came up in the light of this, these are 3 pre-existing non-conforming lots that we are essentially reducing the non-conformity, though, again, this is creating a new lot. Are board have reservations of proceeding with that? Charles?
Yeah, I would like to see us be able to move on this tonight. You know, in a sense, it would have been ideal for the applicants to have been alerted to this when they, you know, when they realized they needed to apply for the permit. It almost seems counterintuitive that you take 3 pre-existing non-conforming buildable lots and combine it into one, and now you don't have, technically that may have extinguished the right for a buildable pre-existing non-conforming lot, but that seems bad faith on the part of the town, really. So I would personally like to, if we can, and if the rest of the board is comfortable, be able to address this tonight.
Okay, Arlene?
I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you, the planning board, as a matter of fact, actually did not believe, one of the lawyers there says, if you review 250-18, existing lot of record, he actually doesn't believe that it needs a variance to the lot width. The argument is because it's a newly created lot now. But in the beginning, he doesn't even feel that why do we need a variance? It's an existing lot of record. If you read 250-18, it says nothing herein shall prohibit the use of an existing lot of record as defined in Article 8 of this chapter of less than prescribed lot area, lot width, or lot frontage for the district in which it is located. You see that, Charlie? John 250-18.
So
Yeah,
go ahead, Charles.
But Arthur's point, I think, is correct, that this is, that applied to just that single narrow middle lot. Is the new combined lot an existing lot of record? That's
It is now recorded as a lot.
right.
But I'd just like to say that I think if John can modify his variance to say that the planning board realizes that this 3 or whatever acreage, there's 3 different acreage measurements on it. Whatever the acreage is of this lot is non-conforming, and therefore the planning board, realizing that letters have been sent and neighbors are aware of this meeting, the planning board thinks that we should act on an additional variance to build on this substandard acreage.
Right, I think we can give the reasoning in our notes, but and add that comment.
Add a second variance.
Sure. Okay, other comments from the board? Ron, what's your thoughts on this?
No, I'm in agreement that seems to be in the applicant's best interest, the way to proceed. I just don't want to be John and have to come up with that draft motion on the fly.
Certainly, Russ.
I think I would like to see this move ahead, and I realize you got a, I guess they call it a sticky wicket, but you had 3 non-conforming lots that each could have been built on. The person had the wherewithal to purchase 3 lots that were much smaller and bring it into a bigger area, which is closer to what the town apparently wants there, an AR5. And I can't foresee any reason why there'd be anybody that would object to this proposal tonight. I mean, if you want to put some kind of words in that you think are going to cover that, but I don't see why that they would, have to turn around and get another variance to build on a non-conforming lot when it's much better than the non-conforming lots that were there to originally be there.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here and just say that when they go for a building permit, is it feasible that the zoning enforcement officer might look at this and say, well, it doesn't have 5 acres? And
Why do you
if,
look at it?
pardon?
You already look at these plans. That's how you get the denial. That's how she got the denial.
I understand
look at
that,
this.
but now that it's ready to go forward, could he have an aha moment and stop this thing in its tracks?
But why would he do that to stop the clock again and send it back to you for another variance?
I'm asking the question just for everyone to consider. So I will certainly try to come up with some wordage here that covers that situation, if I can.
Could it be,
But the question then becomes, does that really cover it? You know?
Sure, good question. Norma, go ahead.
would it be so simple as to, in the past, we've done motions that said pre-existing non-conforming lot, whatever the subject is. Would it be so simple to say this non-conforming lot of record as of whatever the date is,
Yeah.
and just describe it that way?
Hmm.
So they could
I
move.
like that better.
Okay.
And could I ask Arlene to put a different slide on? I'm going blind. To make
Sorry.
things out. Yeah, thank you. I should,
I'd rather not have I'd rather see people.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can go back to just all of us if you can do that, Arlene.
Yeah.
There you go. We're all beautiful faces.
There you go. Okay. All right. So, John, are you okay with that? And that?
Yeah.
Conforming
Somebody's
lot?
going to have to help me out on wording this, but why don't I read the motion?
Let's go do the public hearing first,
Right.
and then we'll get there. Okay.
Right.
I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Comments from the public at this time? Okay. Well, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay. So, John, your motion.
All right. So I'll read this motion and I'll be expecting input from my colleagues here. I motion that the Town of Clinton Zoning Board of Appeals grant a variance from 250 Attachment 2 area and bulk regulations, reducing the required lot width from 400 feet to 387 feet for a parcel owned by Kathleen Doran, Cat and Dog Properties LLC, tax number 6268-00-778071. Whereas the applicant, Kathleen Doran, has combined 3 non-conforming properties into a larger but still non-conforming property in a C/AR5 zone. The combined lots are 3.09 acres in total. 2, the town's area regulations in this zone require 400 feet minimum lot width. The new lot is short by 13 feet. 3, the applicant intends to build a single residence on the property, replacing one which was demolished due to its poor condition. 4, Lake Pleasant Drive is made up of about 21 properties which range in width from 48 feet to just under 400 feet. Most of the lots are in the 100-foot range, making Ms. Doran's the closest to conforming by far. 5, the proposed variance should not have any adverse effects on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. The effect of this project is that the property becomes closer to conforming to the town's goals, and any negative impact on the land is less than if 3 residential structures were to be built on 3 lots. 6, the alleged difficulty is self-created, but the restoration of this property should be a benefit to the neighborhood and to the town. 7, in giving this proposed variance a positive recommendation, the planning board has described the requested variance as, quote, minimal and not substantial, unquote, amounting to slightly over 3% of the requirement. 8, the additional frontage cannot be acquired by any other means. 9, the hardship is self-created. 10, an area variance is a type 2 action under seeker and requires no further action. 11, there are no known violations. 12, all fees have been paid. And condition that the applicant shall pursue a wetlands permit or the necessity of same with the planning board.
Second for discussion.
Second.
Okay. Discussion. So while John was doing that, what if we, I'm just thinking about number 1, what if we change number 1 where it says, whereas the applicant Kathleen Doran has combined 3 non-conforming lots into a larger non-conforming lot in a CAR5 zone. So we're referring to 3 non-conforming and then creating a larger non-conforming.
That's what it says.
It says properties, he's using the word lots.
Right, and I'm saying, I'm changing it just a little bit where it's just saying into a larger non-conforming lot in an AR5. Basically saying the same thing, but just changing a little. Yes, Ron?
Okay.
I was just looking at, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. That's the benefit of having meetings at home, I guess. I was just wondering if we couldn't sort of substitute, I guess is the right word, 1 with 3. 3 reading the applicant intends to build a single residence on the property, replacing one which was demolished due to its poor condition on this 3.09 acre non-conforming lot. In other words, the lot exists now. What's done is done. Do we have to sort of muddy the waters with the 3 lots and the 1 lot and all that language, which kind of exposes the applicant even further, in my view? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get the intent of what you're saying, Ron.
Yeah. Both changing it to lots so it's a little quicker to understand and making it, getting away from 1, 2, 3 or 3 and 1. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, that's a good change. It's done.
Any other comments from the board or recommendations?
I'm a little confused. Are we going with what you said Joe would want, or are we skipping that and going to what Ron just said on 3?
I think we could do both of them.
Oh.
I mean, John, I'm open for your input there. It's just staying consistent with the lots. I mean, mine was basically just a very minor change using that to lots. So number 1 would read, in essence, the applicant Kathleen Dorn has combined 3 non-conforming lots into a larger non-conforming lot in a CAR5 zone. The combined lots are approximately 3.09 acres in total. And then,
Combined lot is 3.09? We're
and
talking about 1 instead of 3.
Yeah, the combined lot.
combined lots, so combining 3 lots are approximately 3. All right, the combined lot, there we go. Right, yeah, the combined lot is approximately.
Okay.
And then John, what, you want to read number 3 as you have it modified?
Number 3 now says the applicant intends to build a single residence on the lot, replacing one which was demolished due to its poor condition.
Ron, were you suggesting on a 3.09 non-conforming, we were looking to add acres on that, or?
I was kind of going in a little bit of a different direction, eliminating the language referencing the combination of the lots in total. So as not to, I mean, as I said, you know, those lots are gone. We're dealing with 1 lot now. If the purpose is truly to eliminate the possibility of saying, hey, wait a minute, these used to be 3 lots, now they're 1, pre-existing, not really pre-existing. Why wouldn't we remove that language in total? Because we are in fact dealing with 1 3 plus or minus acre lot.
I think the first number 1 is a positive statement showing a beneficial thing that's happening by combining those 3 into a larger lot.
That's history. That's done.
Yeah, but I think it's positive to put in here why you might move in a certain direction.
Right. So basically, when we're looking at that, we're saying we're considering, like, what are the factors that are causing us to consider allowing
Okay. All right. I see that point.
at an 8-acre lot, and they wanted to make this, even though it was history, like, and they can brought to a 4-acre or 3-acre, we would be much less likely to approve it.
It's okay. So
3 1-acre lots. And so someone looking at this in the future being like, well, why did they approve this? This is substandard. They can say, oh, in the motion, they had 3 1-acre lots roughly that they combined, and they, so it is still non-conforming, but yet it's much less so because they took 3 lots and they made it into 1.
That in effect supports the intention to get closer to the law. Okay, I got you.
Right. Because again, approving that is not something that normally.
Can we look at number 5?
Okay.
This proposed variance should have a positive effect on the physical and environmental conditions of the neighborhood. This current property is a combination of 3 substandard lots into a larger substandard lot of 3.9 acres in a 5-acre zone.
Well, you're saying that in 5 only different words. The proposed variance shall not have any adverse effect. And then the next thing is the effect is the property becomes closer to conforming to town goals. So it's just how you were stating the same thing, I think.
I'm just taking it out of the top and moving it down there into 5.
Can I throw another wrench in?
We're making a camel here, guys and gals.
Right. It still seems to me that we could solve almost all of this if in the very first sentence at the top, where we simply add, instead of simply reducing the required lot width from 400 feet to 387 feet, comma, insert and requiring a minimum lot area of 5 acres. So we're reducing so we're granting them a variance from requiring a minimum lot acre of 5 areas. That's what we're trying to do here. And if we say it clearly right up there in the first sentence, I think all the rest of this doesn't really matter. It's just to establish for the record how we justified that decision.
Mm-hmm. All right,
not to mention the density, like this is technically 3 buildable lots where you could put 3 houses in there.
No, sorry. I want to see if others agree with me on adding this right at the front. So in effect, we are granting 2 variances here, a minimum lot width variance and a minimum acreage variance.
Without having advertised it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm comfortable doing that. We've done it in the past, and it seems implicit in this that, there was a house there before, there's going to be a house there again. So
I agree with Charles. I think that we should add that in so that we cover both scenarios.
I think if Arlene puts a lot of this in the minutes, that would be good too. This conversation,
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's not advertised, but
Oh yeah, definitely. You agreed, and it was in the past, yes.
Part of what Joe is saying is if somebody decides for some reason in relation to mortgage or something to cause a stink, this could go to a court, and then the court will have our background information, and I think they would find in favor of what we've done.
Yep.
I don't think that would happen. That is such a long but it's really protecting the applicant.
All right.
So I think Charles needs to get us the words to put into that first paragraph.
Sure.
What do you want to insert, Charles?
Well, John, did that make sense to you?
Yeah, I'm working on that right
Yeah.
this minute.
While you're working on that, Norma, any comments?
No more than what I said, which is we're all kind of bantering around the same
Okay.
topic and trying to move forward and just finding the right words. It all means the same thing. But I will ask while John's working though, if I do not keep these maps on file, would the applicants like to have them back? I think they cost a little money to get copied.
Is it Christina? Do you want the copy?
Kristen. It's Kristen.
Kristen.
I mean, we have several copies. If it ends up being fireplace timber for you, then sure. Well, I guess if we wanted to give them to Arlene to temporary store until the next time I'm able to make it up there.
If I usually do give them to Arlene, so
Okay.
I'll do that.
All right. Appreciate it.
All right, can I try
I don't
something
need
out?
everybody. I don't need everybody. Some of you can use it.
No, you're gonna take them all. You're gonna take them all. They're all coming back. We'll bring a truck.
All right, John,
You
go
can
ahead.
stay in my living room. All right, so let's try this again. I motion that the Town of Clinton Zoning Board of Appeals grant a variance from 250 Attachment 2 Area and Bulk Regulations, reducing the required lot width from 400 feet to 387 feet, and reducing the required lot size from 5 acres to 3.09 for a parcel owned by Kathleen Doran, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How's that sound?
All good, except that I've got three different numbers for the acreage. So if you go approximately 3.9, which is planning board, but I've seen
Approximately.
287 and 295. I just put approximately.
Approximately, okay. Okay, easy enough.
All right, that sounds good. Charles?
I second the motion to amend.
I like that. I like that. Okay, any other comments on the motion?
I think approximately is very good because I think part of the properties, the underwater we've run into on other properties. So approximate's a good word.
Okay. All right, any other comments? All right, so we're ready to go ahead. I will call your name and I vote is in favor of granting the variance. Russ Tompkins,
Aye.
Arthur Weiland,
All right.
Ron Mostello,
Aye.
Norma Dolan,
Aye.
Charles Cannon,
Aye.
Don Colagero,
Aye.
and I. So your conditional variance has been granted. Kristen, you can reach out to Arlene for further information later.
Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Arlene, I'll amend that and email you the amended copy.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate your patience with all of us as we've critiquing
No,
your.
that's why we are together.
Yeah. Okay, are
Okay,
we?
Kristen, you could go.
What was that?
I was talking.
Kristen, you're set to go.
Approval to be excused. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, so next up we have am I pronouncing this right? Magnata?
Hi, yes, Magnata, yep.
All right, Magnata. All right, great. So the Magnata area variance. So if you would be so kind, you kind of heard everything that we went through, is to explain why it is that you're coming before the Zoning Board of Appeals, what you're applying for, and what we can do to help you out. And then Arthur will take over from there.
Much simpler.
Okay,
Ask
good.
people.
I like simple.
We want to install and build a 24-foot above ground pool with a deck. And we need the variance for the where the 11-foot portion property line.
Okay, and what's the current setbacks?
I don't know, I turned everything in, I don't know.
Can you
50
see my
feet,
screen?
50 feet, residential
Yeah, 50 feet.
hamlet.
All right, so we're going from 50 feet to 11 feet. So that's the application. Okay, great. Arthur.
Yes, okay, planning board. They met on February 16th. Mr. Carroll motioned that the town of Clinton Planning Board is making a positive recommendation to the zoning board of appeals on the requested variance to section 250 attachment 2 regarding an accessory structure requested by Michael and Josephine Magnata on property located at 176 Clinton Corners Road, Town of Clinton, and the parcel number as noted here. It's in a and also it's a residential hamlet district. Whereas the applicant is requesting a variance to construct an above ground pool with the rear yard setback, within the rear yard setback, excuse me. The property is on a 0.49 acre lot in a residential hamlet zoning district. Based on the conversation at the planning board meeting, the planning board believes that the pool deck, and garage and house cover approximately 2,414 square feet of the allowable maximum lot coverage of 2,566 square feet. However, the planning board notes that the exact measurements were neither taken nor provided, and the zoning administrator did not deny the application based on maximum building coverage limits. Item 3, the property is not within ridgeline protection area, but is within a critical environmental area and its Conic State Parkway viewshed. Item 4, the variance requested to reduce the rear yard setback is from 50 feet to 11 feet is substantial. An undesirable change will not be produced in the character of the neighborhood given the several nearby properties with similar structures, nor will the structure be detrimental to nearby properties as the accessory structure will not be visible from the road and will be screened by trees from the neighboring properties. The benefit sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method. The proposed variance should not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical and environmental conditions of the neighborhood. The alleged difficulty is self-created, but should not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the planning board is making a positive recommendation for the approval of this requested variance to the Clinton Zoning Board of Appeals. Seconded by Mr. Auspitz, carried 6-0. Right.
Any comments or further thoughts, Arthur?
Yeah, I'm wondering how is the setback from the deck or from the pool?
From the deck.
Thank you. Because when Arlene had the picture of the actual exact location, which I have here in a document as well, I hadn't quite focused on how close it was to your garage. I drove up there today and just basically saw how it looked, all that flat area at the top of the hill there, on top of your yard. And okay, that's just checking on that deck. I see it on that diagram. Yeah.
Okay. Further discussion from the board? Comments? Anything else, Arthur, before I open the public hearing?
I'd just like to go back to full humanity.
Okay.
Do we have any input from joining property owners?
Yeah, that's what we're going to open the public hearing.
No, I mean letters.
Oh, do we have any communication? No? Okay. Thanks, John.
They all recently got a pool too, so.
Oh. I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Comments from the public at this time? All right, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Further discussion? Okay, Arthur, your motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we grant to Michael and Josephine Magnotta of 176 Luton Corners Road with the grid number indicated, a variance from section 250 attachment to rear yard setback from 50 feet to 11 feet in a residential hamlet zone. Item 1, a change in the neighborhood will be brought about by adding noise in warm weather and possible light incursion. Item 2, the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other feasible method besides granting the variance. Item 3, the variance is substantial, it's about 88%. Item 4, the installation of the above ground pool will not have an adverse effect on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. Item 5, the alleged hardship was self-created due to the desire to add a pool to the yard. Item 6, residential area variance does not require an ag data statement. That's a typo there, but anyway. Item 7, a residential area variance is a type 2 action in the seeker and requires no further action. Item 8, the site is in a CEA district. 9, the site is not within the boundary of a buffer or wetland. 10, the site is in the ridgeline CA and historic overlay protection district, another typo. 11, there are not any known outstanding zoning violations.
Second for discussion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Arlene?
Do you want to add, it's up to you, that the building coverage is sufficient because it's a small lot, 0.491 technically times 20 times 43,560 is 12% of that is 2,566 square feet. Adding all the house, the detached garage, the proposed pool, the deck is 2,414 square feet, which is still.
Well, that's covered in the planning board motion, Arlene, so it's in the record, right?
Yeah, okay.
What, any thoughts from the zoning board? Are we good with it?
I mean, there's certainly other, if you look on Google Maps, you see swimming pools in the neighborhood. So this is certainly not out of character. It's a, it's a neighborhood. It's an RH district. They're small lots. They're flag lots. It's, so this is not, to me, is not out of character with the neighborhood.
Okay.
And I think the point with a swimming pool is to have some noise. I mean, you want your kids out there playing, so.
Arthur, what are your thoughts?
I think they're in the motion.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All right. So at this time, again, I vote is in favor of granting the variance, and nay vote is not in favor of that. Russ Tompkins.
Aye.
Arthur Weiland.
I'm going to think about it a minute.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Ron Mostello.
Aye.
Norma Dolan.
Aye.
Charles Canham.
Aye.
John Colagero.
Aye.
Arthur, any more time?
No.
Okay. And my vote is aye. So your variance is granted. Any conditions on that? Do we have any? I forget.
Keith.
It's too late for that. And I would think they should have been in the motion. I mean,
Pay the fees.
move on.
All right. Okay. Thank you. And again, you can reach out to Arlene. You're finished at this time. So
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
okay.
Anybody need a bathroom break?
Yeah.
Yes.
You wanna take 5 We'll-
Glass of water. Glass of water would be good.
All right,
See if
Bathroom break.
we'll take 5 minutes.
Video.
Oh, boy. Wow, Charlie's really taking a walk in the woods, I guess. I've got to get me one of those screen pictures.
Someday I want to be as smart as Arthur and think of all these things that that cannot think of now.
All right.
It's very good to hear. We need people who stay 10, 15 years.
It's gonna take that long for me to catch up, I'm sure.
The first year is deer in the headlights. It's always what's going on?
Arthur, what was your first year? What
I
year?
think it was 99.
Whoa, that's impressive.
Well, thanks to John, we're all going to have to relearn the code because when the town board,
I'm not too happy about
my copy with completely marked up and flagged is going to be out of date.
there's some stuff going on.
Related.
Time for a new board. All right, are we all back together or ready to continue on? Okay. All right. So we're now moving on to the Del Forno and the Del Forno area variance. And perhaps let's start, Charles, with you as the kind of the new lead on this, to provide some summary and then kind of lay out some of the questions that we had in our last meeting and, provide some groundwork for our discussion for this evening.
And it's my understanding that we are still in the public hearing mode.
That is correct.
So I'm simply going to provide some background and then, seems to me, ask for public input. And I think we can see that there's going to be input. This is an application that was advanced last month and then deferred to this month. The applicant has begun construction of a garage shed in the side yard setback. I guess it's actually 27 feet from the property line. Just a second, I'll get to that. And so you've all, we've had two almost 30-page submissions from both parties, both the applicant, the Del Fornos, and Mr. Heinz and Ms. White have submitted a roughly 27-page document prepared by an attorney and an engineer. So there's an awful lot of information for us to digest. I hope you've all had plenty of time to read it. I didn't print it out. I've read it on a screen. So, but I have it here in front of me. Just a couple of things I did want to comment on. The submission from the neighbors raises a point that's actually a question about whether a front yard setback variance is required, and that's actually not the case under Town of Clinton zoning law. We dealt with this recently. In fact, it's the operative language is either in front of the house or back of the 100-foot front yard setback, whichever is the least restrictive. And so this is well back from the 100-foot front yard setback. So that point raised by the attorney for the neighbors is moot, but they raise a number of other questions. So I was going to let the applicant and the neighbors have their give voice in the meeting, and because I think everybody's aware of the issues. It's my belief that the issues raised last time about stop work orders and those kinds of things are actually secondary. Our job is to, I believe, is to decide on the suitability of the variance application, and not and it was also my impression from materials submitted by the ZEO that in fact there was not work done after the stop work order. But to me, that's basically all secondary to the question of whether there's a compelling case for the variance application. So my preference would be to simply focus on the variance application and whether or not there's justification for placing this structure in the side yard setback. So that's the way I've been approaching this, rather than try to work through all of those details of the photographs and what was taken when and where. So.
Charles, do you want to start with Mr. Del Forno? So, Mr. Del Forno, do you want to kind of summarize, your submittal and what it is that you're saying? You're muted, so I can't hear what you're saying.
Mute. Hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Charles, for that. And thank you to the board members for their input on this. To address the items from last week or last month, number one was the precise measurement. I sent in. Now, I'm assuming that the paperwork, the package that I sent in, everybody has had them and reviewed them. One of the things I have addressing from last week, number one, was the precise measurement. The precise measurement, and I did consult with Spencer Hall. He's a surveyor in the town of Stanfordville. He looked at the survey that I sent him, and he said, yes, actually, you do measure from the center of the stone wall. So the accurate measurement is approximately 4 inches, pretty much what Mr. Heinz had come up with initially. I have an email to that. So that addresses the precise measurement. The other thing, and I don't even know if it's worth talking about, was the stop work order, but Mr. Fenton, I did send him photos, and he said, thank you for sending me the photos. It did jog my memory. The plywood that was in place, no work has been done since then. I have letters from him, emails, to substantiate the same. So in order to go on with regarding the placement of the shed, first of all, I just want to say that this shed will be used for the stuff to maintain my property. I have a plow with a sander and a pickup truck with a plow and a sander, portable generator, riding mowers, rototillers, push mowers, stuff like that. And the following items that I'm going to say, and these are fact, and the letters that I have letters from all of the surrounding adjacent homeowners, which I did submit to you folks. And I just wanted to say that those letters were given freely on a voluntary basis, only after they reviewed the details. Some of them actually came over in person. There was nothing offered to them, monetary or otherwise. So number one, there will be no impact on public safety, does not impact on water supply or septic, no increased traffic, no increased noise, no change to the characteristic of the neighborhood. I had some photos submitted. I don't even know if it's worth putting on the screen, but the photos were photos that I took from my driveway and from other sections of Schultzville Road. It's not located in a wetland. It does not contain any species of animal habitats. The site bill will not create stormwater discharge. It's not located in a flood zone. The building design will be consistent with the surrounding home and also consistent with the neighbor's house. And that being, it will be sided with double 4 white siding. The windows and trim will match the existing home details as well. The architectural will match. It will be an improvement. It's not going to be a cheap shed that you would buy from one of these shed stores with a low roof pitch, cheap shingles, no overhangs, no trim, cheap windows. It's going to be a quality shed. And I did provide some pictures of the finished product there. If Arlene wants to pull them up, I had A, B, and C there. As I mentioned, all of the adjacent property owners, except for number 157, Heinz and Ms. White, they all gave me letters of supporting the variance. Casimir Krempa on the east-northern border, Casal on the southern border, Weisberger on the northern border. One thing I wanted to note is the Weisberger northern border is separated by I think it's a 25-foot piece that belongs to Krempa in the back, because when they bought the property, it was part of this property. They needed to buy it to make it not a landlocked piece of property. And also I have letters from people on Schultzville Road, Mr. Botway, other people on Sunset Trail actually looked at it, Bob Mortensen, Pat at Tuxer Farms. And just wanted to let you know that all of the letters submitted, the documentation to this document was given freely, voluntary, only after they reviewed the details, the maps that I gave them, and some of them actually did come here in person. So there's no evidence that granting this variance will have an undesirable effect of any kind. And moving on, the only objection I have is from the neighbors at 157. And that objection being that they can see a portion of the shed through the trees. If you want to look at photos number 1, oh, thank you, Arlene, you're a step ahead of me. Photos 1 and 1B, and that's only during the winter time or non-leaf bearing months. And although their auxiliary building claimed to be 50 feet from the property line and probably is so, is 100% visible to my wife and I 12 months a year. And that's photo number 1. And the following measurements were taken from access parcel that I'm going to give you, the access parcel website. So therefore they should be considered estimated. The subject shed on my property is approximately 335 feet from the house at number 157. Their auxiliary building at number 157 is approximately 191 feet from my home located at number 137. One of the items, in addition, even if there was another area to locate the shed, not requiring a variance, although doing so would be a safety concern for emergency vehicles. And I believe the fire chief, I think his first name is Don Estes, was consulted, and that building would still, even if it was cut off 50 feet, if there was room for that, it would still be visible to the neighbors at 157, and most likely more so, because it would be moved out from those hundreds of maple trees that are right behind the stone border. By their own admission, the neighbors do not want my shed located anywhere on my property. Same, period. This objection is unreasonable and without merit, and here's why. If the reason for denying a building positioning, that is a shed, garage, pool, trampoline, etc., were based solely on only one neighbor's objection of being able to do the same, I can't believe that there would ever be a variance granted. The 50-foot setback creates an unnecessary hardship as determined by the characteristics specific of my property, and therefore interferes with the reasonable use and enjoyment of the same. No reasonable alternative exists, and here is why. My property has only a small level area to work with. The location was well thought out and based on safety being the predominant factor. There's a level plateau located in the middle of a steep hill. The driveway is hilly and winding. Emergency vehicles, delivery vehicles, they need room to turn around at the top. Fire trucks cannot back down. And I have letters from my oil company, from Star Gas Propane Company, from Palumbo Group, who are construction managers. The topography is hilly. There's many tall trees and mostly pines. They fall over regularly. I think in the 10 years I've been here, I've had over 15 of those tall trees fall down. Twice they knocked down my power lines. Once they just missed my house. And most recently they fell down right on top of the propane tank and fortunately didn't explode it. The majority of the land is a rock ledge under about 12 inches of soil. I know this because I have a backhoe and I have dug up 12 inches down below me. And that is not a shale ledge where you can dig into. When you hit that rock is solid. The building is of a pleasing design, and that would be photos 5A, 5B, and 5C. And it will include landscaping, 5B. The siding will be consistent with the present home that I have. The aforementioned items address any and all objections to the approval of the requested variance, and the variance should be approved without further delay and without any contingency or stipulations attached thereto. The objection on 157, that being only limited visibility, is without merit, unreasonable, unwarranted, and lacks substance. In closing, the aforementioned items should address any and all objections to the approval of the variance. I believe after careful review, the board will, number one, agree that the current site is the best location based on the following items below and are more relevant than the neighbors complaining of seeing a portion of the building. Safety being number one. I refer back, I haven't seen it, but I do know that the fire chief was consulted. The aesthetics, the finished structure will actually be a complement. It will be an improvement to the property. It's not going to be an eyesore. It's going to be a very fine building and convenience. I assume that after all the pictures submitted and including the supporting statements, letters, documentations, and site visits by various agencies, services, and professionals, you'll agree that the variance should be approved without any contingencies or stipulations. I also did include in the package I had a certified New York State appraiser come to the property. She looked at the property, she took pictures of the shed, and her statement is in here. Here you go. Okay. Her statement says, pursuant to your request, the subject property was inspected on February 12th, 2021, for the appraiser to give her opinion as to whether or not the new garage in process of being built would affect the property value of the neighboring property. When the appraiser inspected the property, there were no leaves on the trees, and you could hardly see the neighbor's house from the garage site. The neighbor's studio is seen in the photo that she took. She wanted to make certain that we were knowing that was the photo and not their home. It's not the dwelling. When the leaves are on the trees, both properties will be out of sight of each other. It's my professional opinion that the value of the neighboring property will not be negatively impacted by the garage at the Del Fornos are in the process of building. Also, I wanted to just make a statement. I'm a real estate broker, property value statement. I've been a real estate broker going on close to 4 years. Well over 1,000 price opinions and over 1,000 market analysis for banks and lenders across the country. Never have I been asked to make a negative monetary adjustment for a neighboring shed or garage, and never have I done so on my own, even if it was in 100% full view on an adjacent property, unless that building was in very poor condition. And I attached the letter from a certified appraiser, so you don't have to take it from me. Certified appraiser has the letter attached in your package. Maybe I covered 90% of what I had, but I think for now, thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments there? You feel like you definitely presented a lot of information. We do have the packets.
Yeah, everybody still awake?
Yeah.
All right. So at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Heinz, Mrs. White, if you have comments, if you want to share what information you would like to with us.
Okay, hi, everybody, and
hello.
Thanks for hearing our case. That was a lot to listen to there and respond to. I will say as an overall statement before I get into a few of these points, we probably wouldn't be here if Mr. Del Forno had just properly filled out his permit in the first place and found a proper site. And I'll explain that, what I mean by that a little later on, but we are here and we're dealing with the aspect of a variance, and I understand that. As you all know, because you probably read our lawyer's memo, he tried to approach this entire issue on the balancing elements that are involved with making a decision by the zoning board. And his conclusion in the memo, as you probably saw, that 4 out of the 5 did not meet the requirements for the Balancing Act requirements and therefore should turn down the variance. Now, I just want to briefly go into those particular elements. As far as impact on the neighbor, we are directly impacted by that. Now, it's easy for, of course, Mr. Del Forno to say, well, we're only partially impacted because there's a partial view. Remember, it's easy for him to say that because he's put up his building now. He never asked us about how this building should be placed. Did it affect us in any way? And so he's made that decision that it's not having an impact on us. Well, it is. And we can see it, and we will see it once it's, wherever it's going to be, it'll be covered up, painted, and what have you, and we're going to see it. The fact that it's so close to our property makes it just more close to our vision, and it's a visual impact. There's no question about it. It's pressing the edges. And we're not against him putting up a building. We just want him to do it at 50 feet. My God, that's what we did, my studio. And why can't he do the same thing? As far as the other people that have written about it, my neighbors that surround, they don't even have their house anywhere near there. They don't even see anything. We're the only people that are directly impacted by this, and we see what's going up. So obviously, you're very disturbed by it. So that's the first thing. And then the feasibility alternatives, that's part two. If you look at, I'm not sure whether Arlene can put it up on the screen or not, but
I'm
we
sorry,
hired-
which one you want me to, I'm sorry, Woody, which one? You want me to put your, or the one from your lawyer?
yeah, Mark,
The surveyor,
the
engineer.
surveyor's map, yes, the engineer's map.
Which was included with your lawyer, or?
That's correct, with the
Okay.
lawyer.
Exhibit A.
I will. You can keep talking.
Oh, well, I
It's-
mean, I was trying to work with the image itself and make it easier for everybody to see what I'm saying at the same time. But Mr. Graminsky's map, now he's
The surveyor.
the
engineer.
surveyor's engineer map. He's been in the business for 37 years. He
Yeah.
came out to actually see the site and take site measurements with satellite imagery and everything like that to get the most accurate dimensions. And so his dimensions are important. But in the end, because he's an engineer, he looked at the site, evaluated the topological condition and the possible location for other sightings, the slope, and also, how far it was from the wall and the setback rules, took all those things into consideration. And he came up with his recommendation, which is in the lawyer's report. And it's very clear when you read Mark's statement that everything that Mr. Del Forno said in item number 2 in his application for a zoning variance are absolutely incorrect, and I would say even false. They are not relevant in any way. I'm not going to go through them each one, but bottom line is relocating the house to suggested locations within the correct setback opens up the space for the driveway. There's not a problem with terrain. And there's also a good location in relationship to the house too, as far as putting your equipment in there. All that could have been done from the very beginning and very easily. And now it's being recorded by the engineer who has quite a reputation and is validating that all this is very possible. And so I think that's a very important part in terms of the feasibility part. It
Can
could
you
have
tell me
been
what
some
page
results.
we're looking at? Is it? the
That's
survey?
it. That's it.
That's it right there. So I guess now everybody can see. That's the two suggested locations. And you see it really opens up the space for vehicles, service vehicles, et cetera, that does not impede with where it is now. So I'm still on the floor here, thank you.
Oh, okay.
And so anyway, I think that's pretty obvious when you look at that Mr. Del Forno had every possibility in the world to put it in another location, and that his reasons for not being able to do that were really after the fact when he was caught putting up the structure without getting a permit in the first place. The third one is the substantiality factor. It's part of the balancing act. And since now we've substantiated it's 24 feet, not 27, difference to the 50, that puts it at a greater than 50% structural statistical deviation, which I think that puts it in another, again, in the realm for denying the variation. The fourth one is more open-ended, not as critical, but the last one is also very important. That's the self-created difficulty. And there's no question, I think everybody knows, I'm assuming everybody knows, that this was a self-created difficulty and it never had to happen this way. So that's 4 out of 5, that's 80%. I think that it should be denied.
Okay, and
Thank you.
any other comments that you want to share, Mr. Hens?
Comments?
Yeah, was there anything else that you
Well,
wanted?
I just wanted to try to make the points as clear as I could. I think the lawyer did an excellent job
Okay.
in presenting that, for helping to create guidelines for making a decision. So I'm just basically reinforcing that.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, any others?
Yeah, I think Mr. Del Forno wants to respond.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Del
Thank
Forno.
you, thank you,
Again,
Charles.
just as a reminder, and
Okay.
you've both done very good with this, that you're addressing, any comments are to the board.
Yes, yes, okay. Thank you. And I will do so. So the mention does it, how it affects Rudy and Nancy, I guess is because they can see it. So as you know, I'm a real estate broker. There's a house around the corner on Sunset Trail, just been reduced down from $7.5 million. You can look out their window, you can see the neighbor's barn, you can see the neighbor's garage. I mean, the fact that because they can see the building, I'm sorry, I don't buy that. Scratch that. That's crazy. The other thing about Grominski and his map, number one on satellite. I have a email here that was sent from Spence Hall, and basically I sent Spencer a note telling that the whole situation here, blah blah blah, and the fact that we were going about the I think it was Ron and Charles, when you were here on Sunday, you were showing me a map with the line that was basically 20 some feet over this way. I reviewed that with Spencer, and he said, here's what he said. He said, first of all, there's a disclaimer. Here's a disclaimer when you go on parcel access. He goes, those maps have a disclaimer printed right on them. First of all, those maps are based on aerial photos with deed plots or estimates superimposed on them. The aerial is not uniform by nature. The further you get from the center of the flight path that took the photo, the more distortion you have. And then you have to place the deeds with no distortion over the photo. So it wouldn't be unusual to have that property line off the wall be 25 feet or more off.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I understand that.
I figured that you would. Yeah, I just, thank you, Charles. I figured that you would know that, but.
I was just surprised that parcel access is often off a few feet, but it's actually looks like it's off quite substantially there.
Yeah, I've seen them. They've had neighbor swimming pools. You go downtown to Poughkeepsie where the lots are a half acre. It gets pretty tough. But anyway, thank you, Charles. And as far as, let's see, as far as the other locations, I do see those other locations, but I have to tell you, like I mentioned, I do have a backhoe, and I have dug in this area. I did different work. When I dig down, it's not a shale ledge that I hit. It's a rock ledge. I mean, if I went to try hard, I would actually break my bucket. So the reason not to put it down on the two suggested, I think there were two suggested areas where Mark Berminski had stated. Number one is there is a slope to the hill. Now that slope to the hill, I can tell you, if anybody wants to come here when it's raining hard, that water pours down off that hill, goes down my driveway. Luckily, I have a swale on my driveway, and it follows the, I call it a French ditch alongside the driveway. But if I were able to put a slab there, number one, those trees do fall over, and Mr. Heinz and Nancy know that for a fact because one of those pine trees fell through their roof last year. One of them fell on my propane tank. I looked out the window and saw the tree right down. Twice they fell down, knocked my power lines down, cost me over $4 or $5 grand to put the power lines back up. Finally, I buried the lines because I got tired of those trees falling over. But number one, to put it in that location, number one, the foundation is going to get washed out because that water just pours off. The topography goes up, it goes up, it goes up. The water pours off that. It would hit against that foundation. Eventually, it would wash off that foundation. I don't think Mr. Hines wants to take liability or responsibility for that. Neither does the town or anybody else. Between I would have to take down those pine trees. There's no reason for me to take that building and put it in a position. I wouldn't want to do that because I'm putting it in this, maybe you can call it the second best position, but it's in a position where I'm setting myself up for failure and financial distress because it's not going to last. And that's just crazy. Now, Graminsky could stand there. He could look for the satellite, whatever. I don't know what he got paid, whatever, but for him to suggest that, I think if he was working for me, he would not make that suggestion.
May I respond?
Sure.
Any other comments, Mr. Del Forno?
No, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hines.
As far as Mark Graminsky is concerned, and he's had 37 years in the business. He's well established. Everybody knows him. He was taking his measurements. He has surveyor tools that are highly accurate, and he positions them in very locations. So every dimension he took is completely accurate. He didn't take his dimensions off a satellite. He may have referred to satellite imagery, but he didn't take his dimensions from that. So let's get that straight. There's no discrepancies in these dimensions. As far as the rock ledge is concerned, well, my studio is built on a rock ledge because I'm on pretty much the same plane as Mr. Del Forno. And it actually was favorable to pour a slab on a rock surface because it made it much more solid and it's never washed out. And I didn't see any report from Mr. Del Forno, from a geologist or other person, that shows that this would negatively impact if he had a pad at another location, which almost of equal slope of where it is now. And I think that would have been helped to substantiate his case. It's just his personal opinion, which I totally disagree with. As far as the trees are concerned, that's not a problem. You put up a structure and you want to operate within the town rules, the town will say, fine, you'll have to take some trees down to operate with the 50-foot setback. That's your issue. That's not your neighbor's issue. And whether they fall over or not, that's a responsibility you have as the person who is putting up the structure. So I just wanted to make those 4 points.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Del Forno.
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions. I'll address it to the board, but my question is, did Mark Graminsky do the original survey on the Hines residence?
I don't see how the board can answer that. Thank you.
No, well, I mean, I don't want to address it directly to Mr. Hines because I'm not supposed to. Am I correct to assume that?
Absolutely correct. Very, very appropriate.
Okay.
And Mr. Hines may or may not answer it. I don't know, but
okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry to jump in here, Joseph.
Well, I'd like to know. I'd like to know the relevance of that question.
Well, I'll tell you the relevance. Well, let me ask you a second question. When he surveyed your property, when I bumped into him,
You're breaking up.
Ask the board.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The board.
You're asking the board a second question?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Arthur. My second question is, did Mark Graminsky survey the entire property when he was here last week for Mr. Hines?
Are you saying Mr. Hines' property or your property?
Yes, Mr. Hines' property. Did Mark survey the entire property?
Anybody on the board know the answer to that?
No, I guess I would ask whether that's relevant. I mean, I think both parties seem to be willing to accept the stone wall. So plus or minus a foot or two as the boundary, even though parcel access has the line 25 feet off of that. But
yeah,
so
24 feet, so pretty close, yeah, Charles.
Right, and so so I guess I don't know what the at the last meeting, I seem to remember arguing against requiring surveys as an unnecessary expense. This is one of those cases where maybe everything would have been a little easier if there had been, but in this case, it would have had to have been the applicant, Mr. Del Forno, to do the survey to establish, so that we wouldn't be arguing, is it 23, 24, 27? It's, right now, for the purposes of this discussion, I think it's fair to just say the building right now is, roughly 23 or 24 feet from an estimate of the property boundary. So I don't know why I guess I don't know why whether or not the Heinz's property was fully surveyed is relevant.
I can respond. We can add a little information. I still don't understand the relevance, and I'd be curious about that. But I know for a fact that the surrounding properties were all surveyed independently before we bought this property. So they were pre-established. When we bought this property, we had to get it surveyed, and that survey conformed to all the other property owners. So that rock wall just reinforced the fact
Okay,
that it was there, and that is a pre-established fact.
good. Well, that simplifies all this. So let's all, I think if there's one thing we can agree on, we're going to treat the rock wall as the property boundary. So let's take our victories where we can, folks. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Delforno.
Okay, thank you. So I'm addressing the board as a need to get a geologist. I don't think I need a geologist to tell me that there's rock underneath the soil when I have a backhoe and I hit with the scoop and I hit the rock. Mr. Heinz already confirmed that his building also hit rock. My house also hit rock. But here's the difference. I know that behind Mr. Heinz's building, it does not go up the slope as quick as it goes. The topography goes up to my slope, and it's a little steeper. Where Mark Verbinski is suggesting the alternate locations, number one, there's going to be rock, and number two, of course, the water doesn't go into the rock. It's going to come across into my slab, unlike behind Mr. Heinz's building where those 300 small maples are. It's relatively level and it doesn't go up as steep as mine. So there's the answer to why there's a difference. And I don't think I need to get the geologist in here to tell me that there's rock underneath the soil.
Okay. Charles, you're gonna.
Thank you, John Joseph. Thank you.
No, I mean, I think it, at some point it's time for the board to start to discuss this. But I just didn't want to, I wanted to give, the parties plenty of time to talk this out so they didn't feel like they had not had a chance.
Very good. Okay, so that's a good lead into our board discussion. Any comments from the board on, based upon the information that we've received? And maybe before we do that, Charles, do you want to just kind of comment on, again, recap our position as the board, what we are looking at, who's making the decision here, and how we kind of do that?
The question is, are we supposed to close the public hearing before we get into this, or
No, let's leave it open before we just want to make sure, because we have a limited time once we close the public hearing.
Right. Well, I think you've all heard the issues. There's a standard set of factors we are to consider in granting a variance. And those have been debated back and forth here. And ultimately, it's up to the zoning board to judge whether this variance is justified. I think it's really that simple. And on all 5 of those factors. And I think the key one in my mind is going to be whether there was whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other feasible method. And that's really the area where I'm anxious to have discussion by the board. The question of whether granting the variance will produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or be a detriment to nearby properties, I don't personally believe that neighbors have veto power, but we take neighbor opinions into account. And but still, at the end of the day, we have to decide based on the balance of evidence whether that factor, this an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or be a detriment to nearby properties, whether that factor is how that weighs against the variance. But for me, the really critical one is whether there was another feasible method, and that to me is where we need to I have to say, even if there had been no issues raised by any adjoining neighbor, that's the first thing I would have asked. Is I would have gone to the site and said, was there a feasible method, an alternative that could be met? You know, it sort of renders the zoning law moot if we just say, well, if this is where you want to put it, that's good enough. It has to, it's the zoning law says quite clearly we should be only granting variances due to documentable, exceptional, and extraordinary circumstances that would result in unnecessary hardships or practical difficulties due to the strict applications of the provisions. So, we are supposed to grant variances in exceptional circumstances where there are truly practical difficulties. And so that's the decision I think that we really have to make here.
Yeah.
That's my introduction.
Just to reinforce two comments that you made. One is certainly the neighbors and their input is very important to us in helping the board make the decision. But that decision does lie with the board, board to make. So thank you, Charles, and comments from the board.
You want to just address the item last meeting where the fire department is supposed to go there?
No, we have no meaningful input on that. So that's
actually, I have two aspects of it.
Okay.
I brought it up at the last fire commissioners meeting. Russ was there as well, and it was the opinion of the lawyer that they do not have the expertise or should not be involved in our bailiwick. I also have an email from Don Estes, who is basically in agreement with the other providers, saying he sees the space as restrictive. So we've got two conflicting issues here. I mean, Don knows what he's talking about, but he doesn't know zoning. So that's it.
So we have, an opinion, but the official opinion is they're not the experts to be able to provide us, some counsel and guidance on that. So again, it leaves it up to us to make that decision. Arthur, did you have what was kind of your take and view on position, location, keeping that in mind, wearing that hat, just as far as vehicles, movement?
What's this hat represent? Vehicles. I think I've got the lawyers, the document from the neighbors with the site plan and that page, whatever page that is, that's page 18 out of 27 on this PDF. And location number 2, when I visited the property, I thought location number 2 was absolutely adequate. There is rock ledge at the, what was that? That would be the east end of location number 2, sticking out of the ground. I didn't measure anything. I don't know how far up that shale or very hard shale, whatever is, but there's also, I don't know how much earth is in that actual footprint on location number 2. And certainly location number 1 is an issue, but there's still all the flat land to the, what would that be, the west, for trucks to move around. They can miss the garage moving around on location number 1.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Arthur.
The public session is still open, so I suppose Ed might have some feedback on my opinion there, but whatever.
Referring to me?
If you want to speak to those 2 locations, I think we have covered.
I'm not sure what you mean about the location to the west. I couldn't pinpoint that on the map.
Not to the west, the land to the west of location number 1, which is basically land that is flat and that you're driving on that is cleared currently. So
You mean in front of my house?
not in front of your house, it's on the side of your house.
The side of my house would be the north.
No, Ed, I think what he means is.
I've got a north arrow on this map. You can see the north arrow on the map. So, and the road, Schutzville Road is to the west.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay.
So to your current location, there's some land to the west, but in location number 1, there's also plenty of land to the west. But in location number 2, if I've got that right, yeah, location number 2, you're completely out of the area that you're driving in.
I think what I interpreted Arthur to say is that the area alongside location number 1 to the west of it, which would be, Arlene, please quit moving your mouse. You could back a vehicle right up alongside location number 1 in the process of turning around, because it's actually the area that would lead to your current location of your structure.
Yeah.
Is that the location where currently the forsythia are planted?
I doubt it.
No, it's where I was pretty close to where I was parking my car when I came up to look at the on Sunday.
Okay, so Charles, I'm sorry, can I ask Charles a question? Charles, I think you parked your car right in front of the stump from a pine that I recently took down. Is that correct?
I don't remember the stump.
Okay, yeah, that's where you parked your car. So, okay, so right there, number 1, that spot location is where I went out and looked myself, and it's like, well, that's probably the second best location, but I don't think that I want to build there because of that water that comes off, and we go same back. There's a shale ledge under there. The water runs down, not through the shale. It'll be hitting the foundation, and that's why I wouldn't want to put that there.
Can I respond?
Sure. No, again, address the board.
Yeah, I'm always trying to find ways to solve problems. Yeah. Obviously, we got one here. I think if it's hard to deal with someone who has a personal opinion about whether the water runs off or the shale. I think the board would be better served if they could have a professional opinion about these issues that Mr. Del Forno claims. It's be easier to make the proper decision in this situation. It may mean tabling this matter till the next time, but to try and make a decision on scant information, which we don't have, professional information. We have Mark Rominski, who's a surveyor and engineer. He says you can do that. And he didn't think, based on the slope, there was a runoff issue. I discussed it with him. And as far as the shale and what have you, like I said earlier, a certain amount of that, if it's soft, you can scrape a shale away, and then you got a rock layer. If you put a concrete slab there, it's better than if you put it down on just soil. It's much more solid. So, I mean, there's reasons why it's a workable situation, but are we getting all the right professional input to make the best decision?
Would Mr. Del Forno want to pay for a town engineer under the direction of the zoning board?
Was that question again?
I'm asking the board in general. Eventually, it would be something you would have to speak to, Ed. But I was asking if a path that would want to be pursued is for our town engineer to be hired and paid for by the applicant.
I think we're going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, folks.
Oh yeah.
There are ways to deal with runoff. The contour lines here, I believe, are in feet. Those aren't in meters. So this is not a particularly steeply sloped area. There are lots of ways to handle runoff in building. That's done all the time. So I guess I'm, I don't consider, that the contour lines there exaggerate the slope is my position.
It's called a French drain.
Yeah, no, there are lots of ways to deal with it.
French drains are for groundwater, not surface water, basically. But anyway, Joseph can correct me if I'm wrong. I can see a swale behind location number 1. There's definitely a little dip going to the uphill, but that's a question of grading. I don't think the zoning board is really going to take into consideration forsythia. They'll either be moved or, this is not part of the issue.
Okay, Mr. Del Forno, you had a comment?
Yes, so my question is, if that was a location, I don't understand what's gained by Mr. Heinz White, because the building is going to be another 23, 27 feet further this way, and most likely will have to be turned. They're still going to see it, and probably more, when their only objection, which I can't seem to get over, is that they can see a building, not a chicken coop, not a pigsty, not a dilapidated barn, that they can see it. That is so unreasonable. I can't believe that we're discussing this. When there's homes that are $5, $6, $10 million, you look out the window and there's barns, there's sheds, there's swimming pools, there's trampolines. Get over it.
So what we're doing is you're actually speaking to the zoning board and what.
Did I make a mistake? I'm sorry, Joseph. Did I make a mistake? I'm sorry.
What we're looking at is we're saying, to Charles's point earlier, is there a feasible way that you can put this shed up that does not require a variance? It's not about whether, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that wherever you put it, the neighbors are going to see it. It's not about them, really. Again, we listen to the neighbors to provide useful and helpful information, to provide us perspectives. Certainly, if they've gone through great efforts to hire an engineer and a surveyor, Mark Leminski, and an attorney, Mr. Lyons, to be able to provide information. Again, we gather that information, and that's information to help us to consider. But again, what we're looking at specifically is to say, can we put this building on your property in such a way that a variance isn't required? That's really kind of the bottom line of what we're looking at. And so, with the illustration that Mark has shown, it, again, whether it's from Mark or, again, it could be any member of the board, it just so happens that there's a picture there that shows it, but it shows, okay, here's a location where the building could go. Certainly, I've been in the building industry and I'm an engineer. Anything can be done to divert water and move things around. The slope, even if this wasn't meters, there's always things that can be done. A little hammering, certainly it's an additional expense, and we can understand that and the difficulty that it causes. But we're looking at to say, okay, as members of the board, we're considering to say, can we put this building in a location that doesn't require variance?
Thank you, Joseph.
Further comments from the
Just
board?
a question, since I don't have this whole map in front of me with all of the delineations, looking at location number 2 being at approximately an elevation of 640 feet at roughly at the back wall. Can someone tell me what the elevation is roughly at the front wall, because that line goes off?
2 foot line, so it's 4 foot down.
It looks like they're 1 foot.
Yeah, they're 1 foot
All right,
lines.
thank you, Joseph. Better than this. Better. Thank you. 2
Yeah.
foot down, 2 foot drop, front to back.
So in other words, the building, if the building was to have been put in location number 2, it would be approximately 5 feet higher than it exists now. Would that be correct?
No, it would be 3 feet. The front would be 3 feet roughly, or no, 1 foot. 1 foot,
The front would be 1 foot.
roughly, yes. 1 foot higher than the current building.
So that would mean that either the rear would have to be excavated or the front would have to be filled,
Well, it's level with the driveway there.
but not that far back, is it? See, I don't have the luxury of the.
Yeah, I understand. His building, his current slab is slightly, it's like a foot downhill in relation to the top end of the driveway. And the driveway itself, that flat area of the driveway has a 1 foot drop, and then down a little bit further, it drops another foot.
John, there was a lot of snow. Ron and I were out there on Sunday. Site 2 does have a tiny bit of slope. I mean, I think it's about a foot from front to back there.
Right.
Site number 1 looked pretty darn flat. I mean, effectively flat from an excavation point of view.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on the same level with the existing driveway.
And the garage, it's looked dead flat into the garage. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Current house garage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any further discussion from the board? Russ, you have any comments?
Yeah, you probably wish you hadn't asked me that, but I'm looking through it and got many. I'm looking at page 3 of the forms that were prepared by the lawyer, and he quoted this right out of the zoning book. In making this determination, the zoning board of appeals shall take into consideration the benefit to the applicant if the variance is granted as weighed against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such grant. Okay, and then of course we go into the points. I mean, I'm looking at it, obviously we know it would be beneficial to Mr. Del Forno, and as whether it would be detrimental to health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such grant, I can't see where that would be in effect at all. But then you have to go down and consider the points, the 5 points. And I notice in 5.1, factor 1, impact upon neighbors in the neighborhood, the conformity or dissimilarity of properties compared to the prevailing conditions in the neighborhood would result in the broken area. And I don't know if this is appropriate, but the neighbor's property is a pre-existing, apparently, piece of property, which is probably grandfathered because it's less than 5 acres, which is the zoning here. And their garage is closer to the road than would be allowed without a variance. So I'm looking at it and saying, well, if this is a detriment, it's like the neighbor's property wouldn't be allowed without a variance now, but it's because it existed prior that it is there. So I'm looking at it and saying, well, what do we have here? We have one place that is requesting a violation, the other place that doesn't technically have a violation, but that's because of its time frame that it was built in. And as I leaf through here further, I see factor 2, the feasibility alternatives. And in both of them, the papers say that I'm trying to think where I had page 1 and page 2. Oh, wait a minute, I'm in the wrong spot here. Anyway, both of those places, other sites, 1 and 2, they mention that it would require some grading. Now, we don't know how much. My question is, because you have a potential feasible alternative, is that grounds to deny the variance? Is that binding or is it not? If it's binding, well, we're in a position where we don't have wiggle room. If it's not binding, that's a consideration. Factor 4, he said it does not appear this variance will have a significant adverse effect on the physical environmental other than the aesthetic impacts, which is apparently the view from the neighbors. And it's been mentioned the distance from the neighbor's house, which is an uphill distance looking up to see the back of this garage. Balancing test conclusion on 5. They're talking about evidence that proposed development would have an adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood, particularly as the surface water and groundwater. Well, that's not here, so that must be one of the ones that wasn't in it. But I'm looking at these variables and I'm saying, and I don't know the answer, maybe you all can fill me in, because we come up with a possible feasible alternative, is that grounds for saying, okay, because of that, we cannot issue the variance? Or do we look at the factors and determine, basically going back to that paragraph I read, the benefit to the applicant weighed against the detriment to health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such grant? I can't see where it's going to be detrimental to any of those factors. Unfortunately, Mr. Del Forno put the cart before the horse when he went ahead and started building this without ever applying for a permit or a variance. But our function is not to be punitive in his error, even though that did take place. So, I mean, I'm kind of confused about how we have to proceed with this. It appears to me that we would present the motion that Charles has presented, and based upon our own individual interpretations of this, see how the vote goes.
Okay. Any, Charles, do you want to provide any answers?
No, I agree with Russ. You know, the language gives us judgment. You know, there are these 5 factors. And I think we all have, you know, have to make a decision on how to weigh them. You know, I come back to weighing the feasibility factor quite heavily, I guess, Russ. 'Cause just, you know, it's sort of, otherwise, why are we here? If, you know, we have a long record of granting variances. In fact, it's quite rare that we do not grant variances. And I think it's because people know that they have to have a compelling argument for why they need relief from the arbitrariness of a setback requirement. And we get very good, compelling cases where there would be undue hardship and there's really no good alternative for the landowner to have, you know, reasonable and use of their property. And so I, you know, if this is only a balancing of benefit versus detriment, that sort of moves us away from this. But I agree with Russ. This is it's not that factor number 2, feasibility, to me doesn't rule, but it's important. And that's sort of where I am.
Yeah, and again, just to comment on what both of you are saying, and that is that we're looking at this in the sense of, okay, the cart was before the horse, the building went up. But if we were to take all of that away, take away that the building was even started, again, let's look at this as a brand new application. Yeah. They applied, there's no building. So we're not gonna say, oh, we started, we're gonna penalize them, or to say, well, he already put the slab in, so let's give it to him. But like, just again, take everything away. Let's just say the cart wasn't put before the horse. And again, this application came to us and we're just looking at it like brand new. Like we would weigh this out. If there was nothing done here, again, whether good or ill, if nothing was done and we took a look at this application, what would we decide? And I think that's really what we need to take a look at. And certainly, you know, many of you have had the opportunity to go out there and take a look at this and evaluate the site. We've had a chance to get a lot of information from professionals, from attorneys, from our own views to look at this. And again, to say, you know, what do we feel based upon all the factors that we have to consider that Russ, you know, you did a great job of going through, and Charles and commenting on, this is why we're here, to really look at this, to say, if the applicant came to us and said, I want to put this shed here in the setback, and these are the reasons. And again, Mr. Dalforno has put forward a good, good case for him to, this is where he wants it, obviously. And again, we take that information to say, is that good enough? And that's what we really need to decide. Or, are one of these, or is there another location? Again, we have a map here. Again, it could be anywhere. It could be, closer, because the front yard setback's 100 feet. So there's, it can scoot forwards a little more. But again, there's some locations shown by Mr. Graminsky or any others that we can imagine. And that's where I think that we are in viewing this. Let's see, who have we not? Arthur, go ahead.
Yeah. We're doing a balance between the community and the individual.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had, at least I can remember at least 2 times where people have had to either move a pool that was almost entirely constructed, or a pool that had been dug. They had to fill it back in and move into a proper location. We need to protect the community by having the zoning be meaningful. That's
okay. Thank you. Norma, any comments?
Sorry, I had myself muted. Nothing in particular. I agree with a lot of the comments, so I won't repeat them. We've had enough.
All right. Thank you, Norma. Ron?
Well, to Norma's point, anything I would say would kind of just echo what has already been said. And I think you and Charles kind of framed it, I can't be as eloquent, but if we remove all the noise of, no building permit, et cetera, and just look at this at its face value, I do believe there is something to seriously consider here in terms of alternate locations, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Let's see. John, any comments yet?
Not really anything new to add. The 5 considerations that we struggle with, fortunately or unfortunately, are not hard and fast all the time. They contain certain words that are subject to interpretation. For example, self-created difficulty. It depends on how far back you go. A difficulty could be self-created if you bought the property to begin with. That could mean that you took it knowing that it had certain issues that were involved with it right from the get-go. And substantial has always been one that varies depending on an individual's perception. So these 5 considerations contain sort of by their very definition a spectrum that we all have to decide where the needle is, to one end or the other. And that's why this is a quasi-judicial board more than anything else. This very often shows up with interpretations. So I think that there's been a lot of information that's come out. There's also a lot of emotion tied to this. But I got to tell you that I think as much as we want to separate the idea that this building was started without the proper documentation. As much as we want to eliminate that from the thought process, you know, that brings another aspect into it. And that is the effect on the community if this type of thing starts happening on a regular basis. So it's very difficult to separate those things. For me, it's very difficult to separate them as we're all looking at this and saying, well, let's consider this on its merits by itself. You know, from the standpoint of a property owner, you know, their rights and their desire to develop the property in a way that's consistent with their level of enjoyment. You know, I respect the fact that sometimes the zoning restricts that, and that a person, you know, has to temper that. This case is, you know, really puts us to the test, and I don't think that you know, there's going to be any kind of unanimous decision here, and each of us is going to have to wrestle with the depth of each of these 5 factors and what any one of them means and where the needle is. And I wish there was some magic statement or consideration that would make it a lot clearer for all of us. But I'm afraid there's just not.
Thank you, John. Mr. Delforno.
I just have one question. I'm not clear on what item number 3 is.
The 5 we're referring to, probably we all have different, but they're listed in the zoning code, and the third one in the zoning code is whether the requested variance is substantial. And
Okay,
you know, it's that the
thank you, Charles. I understand it.
Okay, is there any additional information that the zoning board, you know, having gone through this discussion, received the input from professionals, from Mr. Delforno, is there additional information that the zoning board feels that they need in order to make a decision at this time? And Arlene, can you get all of us on the screen now?
You done with this?
Yeah, people again. Yeah, there we go. All right, I can see everyone. Okay, and again, just as a reminder, we as the zoning board have to gather all of the information, and then we are making that decision, as John put it. You know, it's a balancing act, and it's a challenge. You know, in every situation, especially these type, where we're looking, you know, we're looking at what are the pros, what are the cons, and then with that information, we need to make that decision. Charles, any further information before I close the public hearing? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Your hand.
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Did you get who seconded it, Arlene?
No, because I said
All right.
something, sorry.
Who seconded it?
Charlie, right?
well, I thought Russ did, but I would
Give it to Russ.
Right.
Give it to Russ.
Yes.
I was a second behind him.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Charles, your motion.
Yeah, just 2 things about this. The draft of the motion I distributed earlier this evening used the 27-foot number that is on the application. It sounds like 23 feet is sort of the request that the applicant would want. So I've made that change. And then just for to remind everyone in Norma's immortal words, motions are always made in the affirmative, and a vote aye is to grant the variance and a vote nay is to deny the variance. So here's my motion. I move that the Town of Clinton Zoning Board of Appeals grant the area variance requested by Edward and Donna Marie Delforno for property located at 137 Schultzville Road, Clinton Corners, New York, tax parcel number as noted, To reduce the side yard setback from 50 feet to 23 feet to allow placement of a 14-foot by 24-foot shed/garage with 40 square feet of additional storage space. The property is an 8.1 acre lot in an AR5 zoning district. Factors: 1, the applicants have begun construction of a shed garage that is located approximately 23 feet from the neighboring property line and therefore require an area variance for the structure to be in compliance with Town of Clinton zoning law, section 250, attachment 2, district schedule of area and bulk regulations, which specifies a minimum setback for side yards of 50 feet. 2, town zoning law allows granting of variances where, quote, due to documentable, exceptional, and extraordinary circumstances, there would result unnecessary hardships or practical difficulties due to the strict applications of the provisions of the zoning law. 3, in considering variance requests, the Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with considering, among others, 5 factors. A, whether granting the variance will produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or be a detriment to nearby properties. The immediately adjoining neighbors have submitted their opposition to the variance, but other neighbors have voiced support for the application. B, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other feasible method. The applicants assert that placing the structure in the setback is necessary to provide ample space in their driveway for trucks and emergency vehicles to safely turn around rather than have to back down a relatively steep and winding driveway. Moving the structure out of the setback, however, would put it just under 50 feet from their residence. C, whether the requested variance is substantial. The applicants request a reduction in setback from 50 feet to 23 feet. This is clearly substantial, but does not preclude granting the variance. D, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. Lots in this neighborhood are large and generally heavily wooded, and construction of a shed garage of these dimensions near the principal residence is unlikely to have any adverse effect on environmental conditions. E, whether the alleged difficulty is self-created. The difficulty is indeed self-created, but that this does not preclude granting the variance. And then factor 4 is just to note that an area variance is a type 2 action under SECRA and requires no further review, conditions that all fees have been paid.
Second for discussion.
Second.
Russ seconded it, Arlene.
I got it.
Okay, discussion. Any comments?
Yeah, on item B, moving the structure out of the setback does not necessitate that it would be just 50 feet from their residence.
That, you know, you're right. You're absolutely right, Arthur. There are other places it could be. Yep. So I'm happy to strike that. Just
Thank you.
we all know that we've all seen the maps and that there are alternatives. So that's a good point. I was revealing my my take on this. So do you want to make a motion to amend it to remove that line?
You can just amend it.
Discussion.
We haven't.
Discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you, Arthur.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we will now go to the vote. Again, an aye vote is in favor of granting the variance. A nay vote is in opposition to granting the variance. Russ Tompkins.
Aye.
Arthur Weiland.
No.
Ron Mostello.
Wait, slow down.
Okay.
Okay. Russ is no. I mean aye. Art is no. Go ahead.
Arthur is no. Russ is yes.
Aye.
Yes, an aye. Ron?
Nay.
Norma?
Nay.
Charles?
Nay.
John?
Charlie, I'm sorry. Charlie's no.
No.
No. Yes. Nay.
Aye.
And mine is nay.
Hold on. Joseph is nay. I have 2 ayes and 5 no. 5 nay, right?
That is correct.
Failed.
Okay, so
I've got low battery. I got to go plug in, but I will stay online.
okay. All right, so The area variance was not granted. So any further questions, again, you can follow up with Arlene about that. And are there any other comments or questions from the board? Okay. All right, well, thank you. And we're continuing on with our meeting with some review of minutes. So those who have joined the
Happy
meeting,
day, sweetie.
you can also.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, so we do not have any meeting minutes to review, is that correct? All right, so Russ is here. Do we have
You guys got the
okay,
in your
Arthur?
packet. I'm sorry.
Arthur.
You got in your
All right,
packet.
so I think I do have a comment, but any other further questions? Just a note afterwards, but we don't need to be in public session for that. Arlene?
Yeah. I put in your packet about the ag events. So Airbnb ag events were in business.
Okay.
I didn't quite understand that.
Ag events and
Oh,
Airbnb.
Yeah, it was in our packet if you received it.
yeah.
They were part of your packet. So
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to adjourn the Town of Clinton Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Do I have a second?
My dog definitely seconds. She's waiting.
I know.